All right. So I think we are once again live. Time to Live Radio. This is show number 2, January 2nd, 2018. Happy New Year. And I'm your host, Stephen Elmroth, here together again with my father, Peter. Peter Elmroth, welcome.
Hey, Hassan, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right. We're going to try to save the world tonight, Pop, just like we did last week.
That's a pretty big task, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's a pretty small world, so should be fairly doable. And I had a bunch of ideas on how to do the show, and because I want to do a radio show, and talk about certain things that are on my mind, but I don't have a soapbox big enough to reach the entire world, so I'm going to use the internet instead. And I'm sort of saying things kind of tongue-in-cheek, and but you know, for the most part, what I'm talking about is serious. And speaking of serious, I have a picture of my mother up there.
Yep.
Pretty Susie.
Pretty Susie.
She'd be happy to see her face up there on the internet, I'm sure. And I think we were talking before the show, Pop, and you said, you know, I said, what should we have for a picture up there? And you're like, let's have a pretty lady. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wanted to, want to keep things sort of light, and I figured that the format is just going to be just discussion. I've tried to play around with putting together pre-written essays and editing video and putting it online. It was so much work that I just couldn't do one show a week. It's hard enough just to do a live broadcast once a week, and eventually, I love my job. I really do. But I'd love to quit my job.
Be able to, huh?
Yeah, and just do this full time. But for the meantime, once a week is the goal here. So we're a little late today. We wanted to get started around 8 p.m. and it's almost 9 p.m. So, but this is the easiest way to do a radio show. You just get some software to stream it right to YouTube, and it uploads it automatically as the stream actually. So I think
that's the easy part, right?
Yeah, it's a lot easier. There's no editing, no uploading. We can do all that maybe later, but
Yep.
for right now, the Tuesday show would just be me and you sitting around and talking. So, just to recap a little bit, the show is called Time to Live, and it's because it's if you're not living, you're dying. And what was it? What was that show? Rush with Chris Hemsworth. He was the race car driver. He's like, why do chicks dig race car drivers? It's not because we go round and round in a car in a circle. It's because our proximity to death. We're so close to death, it makes us more alive.
That's attraction right there. Being close to death.
Women love life. Everybody loves life.
Yeah.
Everybody loves life. You love to look into somebody's eyes and see the life just bubbling out of them. And so Susie has a fairly serious look on her face here.
Yep.
But that sort of sets the tone here for the show. Is we want to try to crack some jokes and be funny, but really this is serious stuff we're talking about. And as the show goes on, as the season progresses, we are going to in fact be very serious on some of our topics. So whenever possible, we should try to crack a joke at the right time, I guess. But we'll see how effective we are at delivering the message here. So the show is called Time to Live because I was just reading, we were watching a show from who was it? Kenneth Rolla. And he was talking about, his friends who had free energy machines. You know, energy machines are over unity machines, also called free energy. 0 point energy machines. Energy machines that, for example, a magnet machine might take a little energy to start it spinning, but once it starts spinning, the magnets are arranged in such a way that they keep spinning. They overcome the force of friction caused by the bearings, the imperfection of the bearings, the friction of the bearings. For example, you know, in the center of each wheel, there's friction upon its fixed axis. And it also has extra energy too that has output. You can take that energy and light up a light bulb or whatever. So energy is machines that produce more energy than they consume. So Ken Roller's friends, he's saying that they've been killed over this. And, you know, Brown's gas, guy developed this fourth gas that has a fourth state of matter, water. It's not steam, but it's a gas of water. And you can run your car on it. And there's that one other guy, he had a water-powered car. He had a spark plug kit you could put in your car. Just change the spark plugs and you can run your car on water. And these people are, I don't know, you can sort of do the research and find out, you know, they're no longer living. And, you know, a conspiracy theorist would say they were killed by the energy cabal that wants to prevent people from having this free energy technology. Mm-hmm. But, so Ken Roller was saying that he himself has been threatened. And he didn't say that any life attempts were made on his life, but he said he was threatened, and he doesn't even work with free energy. He just sort of talks about it, and, you know, among his other amazing things, scalar energy. He talks about how you do a whole show on Ken Roller and not even scratch the surface about how plants are scalar energy devices, scalar energy receivers, and they, for example, if you plant an acorn in the ground, okay, mm-hmm. and you wait, 100 years, there's going to be a massive oak tree there, right? 100-ton oak tree. And the dirt is just going to be sitting there as it was before. So where did this 100 tons of earth come from? Where did this 100 tons of material come from to create the oak tree, the giant trunk? It didn't come from the dirt, because there'd be a giant 100-ton hole there. But there's no hole there. Where did all the matter come from? Where did all the matter come from to create those cells? So Ken says that the plants take energy along with sunlight. Mm-hmm. They take the ambient scalar waves coming from the center of the galaxy or wherever they come from, in conjunction with the sunlight and some water and nutrients from the earth, mm-hmm. and they create matter. So they turn these scalar waves with certain small amounts of minerals, they turn them into matter. So anyway, Ken Roller is amazing. We'll have to do a show on him. And so the point is that he knows people that have been killed over their energy. So what I'm going to say, I'm not only going to talk about the free energy, I'm going to talk about the whole thing and what's going to save me from life attempts at my life, and because I'll have no listeners, But if I do get any listeners, I'm taking measures to make sure I can deliver my message for a good long while. Mm-hmm. So that's why the show is called Time to Live. It's my time to live. And it's just, I used to think that I would look out for number one, and take care of your family, mm-hmm. in your community, in your country, and if you have any time left over, you have time for God. But I realize that's exactly opposite. Now, for what's important to me, number one is God, and I use the word God because everybody sort of, they have their own idea of what that means. They sort of know what it means, but really, I don't use that word God normally, because I'm not talking about the cosmic hillbilly, that came down in a smoking spaceship with 4 horsemen and, proceeded to turn the rivers red. I'm not talking about the dirt devil that came to the Arabs in Middle East. I'm not talking about the fat Buddha or the blue Krishna, or, I'm not talking about the sun or Jupiter or, Aries or constellations. So everybody has to kind of learn what I'm talking about to know what I'm talking about. But until then, I just use the word God. So the most important thing is God. All right. So that can also be called truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing there is, the truth. And after that is the next most important thing is your country, and then is your community, and then your family, and finally, if you have any time left over for anybody else, then finally you take care of yourself. And the trick is, or it's not a trick, but the funny thing about that little formula there is that by taking care of those things in that order, you automatically take care of yourself. You don't have to take care of yourself. You don't have to try to exercise or eat right or take any pills or do anything, because that's already happening for you already. Just by taking care of everybody else, you automatically take care of yourself. And there's different ways to talk about that, I suppose. But for me, that's, this show is really about what I've learned in my 52 years. And what we said last week, I'm going to go over a review here in a minute. And we'll try to keep the show to an hour, under an hour. It'd be nice to keep it at a half an hour. But I'll keep it at, we'll see how we go. See where it takes us. Maybe half an hour is probably better, huh?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're halfway done with the half an hour. So, All right. So we talked last week about some subjects, and I'll just run. Why don't I? We're going to talk about here. Yeah. So we talked last week about me being 52 years old. All right, that's a special. I spent the last 5 years in Mexico, and southern Mexico, where the Mayans are, and Guatemala. I didn't go there, but in southern Mexico and Chiapas, and other areas, Oaxaca, the Mayans are, the indigenous people there have, the ancient Mayans had developed this calendar system, different calendars they had, and basically they said you have a different energy. Every day is a different energy. Like rhythmic moon, have, a totem animal and an energy, a tone. So you combine them all, and not until you're 52 years old do you see all the energies. So now I'm 52. I'm what the Mayans call an elder. So now I'm going to repeat the energies, and now I apparently now have something to say. So the powers that be, let's call them the Xenosh. The Xenosh with X. Like xenophobia is a fear of the others. And so I think it was John Lamb Lash coined the word Xenosh, meaning
he coined it?
Yeah. I think so. I haven't heard anybody else say that word. He coins many words, new words. So the Xenosh are the others. And they should have killed me already. They had I gave them fair warning. I told them I was doing the show all last year. They could have contacted me and said, all right, we'll give you a job at this university and you can make six figures and teach anything you want, and we give you a nice apartment and give you a little Toyota Corolla, and and you can be a professor. And
So what happened with that then?
well, they never did it. They could have gave me a tenured position at a university, and then I would just never be able to talk about the subject. But they messed up and they didn't do it. So now I'm going to talk about all these subjects, and I'm going to, in my mind, I have this system developed, and it's going to be the system to basically combine all systems. Let's see how it sort of works as I actually unfold it, because it's only a seed in my mind. But it's going to be the system to take down the Xenash. And the Xenash, let's be clear, the Xenash are the enemy of all that lives. So not just humanity is in danger, but all life is in danger. And if you haven't noticed, the Earth is under attack from someone. And it's fairly easy to see once you have your eyes open that they do this thing called hiding in plain sight. Now, they give their clues, and I've been told that, it's me and Jay-Z and Rihanna were hanging out, smoking blunts one day, and maybe after I pulled out some of this wine I had, and I'll be going to some fake little stories here as we go. So it's up to the listener to weed out the truth from the other truth. So me and Jay-Z and we rang up Rihanna. We started smoking blunts. We got thirsty, so I pulled out my wine flask and started drinking some homemade wine. And they got a little loose-lipped, and they started telling me, about the Illuminati, and they, about how they need to tell. The Illuminati is this Italian mafia of intelligentsia that they're the illuminated few, the illuminated ones, the illumined ones,
Are they the good guys?
The enlightened ones. Well, they're the knowledgeable ones. I would like to think that we're the good guys, but I'm sure a bacterial infection inside of your body that's getting out of hand also thinks that they're the good guys. So, but to the giant overarching living organism, he's the good guy and he's trying to get rid of the bacteria. So everybody's really the good guy. Everybody is just trying to feed their family. And you can't, no, I'm not blaming anybody for feeding their family. That's what they do. That's what you're supposed to do. But every once in a while, it's good practice to get above it all and look down and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right? So, if you're able to do that, then you see your family's bigger than you thought it was. So, the bacteria might see, oh, we're helping each other out, but we're killing the host. And that's what's really happening right now. And just to be clear, the Earth is not the host, because the Earth cares about, the goings-on of humanity. As a dog would about the fleas, and it just needs to jump in the river and shake his fur a few times, and before the flea problem gets reduced significantly. So the Earth isn't worried about atomic bombs or anything like that, and there's different ideas about the Earth. We'll get into that. Talk about her. The Gnostics have a lot to say about her, as do I. But humanity, in particular, has an enemy. And, I mean, the enemy is, from what I can tell, is the enemy of life. And humanity is uniquely positioned to deal with the enemy. So we have to be able to see the enemy, and that involves talking about the enemy. And that's what I intend to do. So, without further ado, here we go. All right, let's talk about last week. We had we sort of went.
Risky too, right? Talking about your enemy
Can be risky.
Yeah, for the talker.
Yeah, it can be risky, but not as risky as not talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's if you're if you're watching a movie, and it's a real exciting movie, and you smell smoke, it's risky to yell fire in a crowded movie house, because if there's only 1 or 2 or 3 small exits, and maybe there's 200, 300,000 people in there.
Mm-hmm.
They all can't get out at the same time, so it's going to be.
Yeah.
You don't just want to go and scream fire, if there's no fire. But if there is a fire, it's riskier to not do anything about it. And I can see a couple of other kids in the corner smoking cigarettes and flicking the ashes over into the dry kindling, and there I can see the smoke. It's only a matter of time before the flames rise up. So I'm trying to. And I can already feel the heat. The flames are already there. There's it's just a matter of. It's not going to be long now before the whole thing goes up. And I always thought this when I was a kid, and 50, 40 years later, I'm still talking about it. So here we are. All right. So, but yeah, it's risky for us. But the alternative is to die a little inside every day, and that's why chicks dig race car drivers. Because they risk their lives, and by doing that they become more alive, and can't live forever. So, you gotta pick your way to go, and being a hero is not a bad way to go out. So, I don't think that's gonna happen because, well, for reasons. We'll talk about those. So last week we talked about. Let's talk about last week. We had a list of stuff. We talked about religion, the Abrahamic trio of Abraham. We talked about Hollywood. We talked about gear. This is stuff we're going to talk about during the year. Medicine, compost, astrology, auto-responsibility, detox, cleansing and fasting, nutrition, the daily cycles, nature, family, God, dancing, fat, videos. All right, so now let's move on to the middle of the road stuff we're going to talk about this year. All right, white people. I had in 2006. I listened to, well, not every show, but in the beginning I listened to every show on Red Ice Radio with Henrik Palmgren, and his very first guest was Michael Tessarian, and I was really into these guys. And Mike, God, it was 10 years ago. I think Henrik is like 30 or something, so 35 maybe, and he was 25 back then, or maybe in early 20s. He's a radio, does a radio program, like we're doing, and his guests were like Ken Rolla. He had guests on about religion, and more than religious, he had spirituality. He talked about consciousness a lot. I really like the shows on consciousness. And he's a marvelous interviewer, just from the very beginning. And his shows were amazing. And then, when was it? 2015? 14? 15? 6? No, it was like around 2014 or 15. He switched over from an eclectic mix of spirituality and consciousness and and new age technology, although he didn't ever really get into the new age thing. And he switched over to a single theme now, which is white people. He's a white guy, Swedish. There's a white bride, white wife, and they got a little white baby now. So he's talking about white people.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, I was like, oh, in the beginning, it was mostly just politics. And I was like, what is all this show? Every show is about politics now. And I started to stop listening to him. I came back a while later, still politics. So I found myself in San Diego, California, at the end of 2016 in November, trying to register to vote remotely for Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the guy who just says it only encourages people, don't vote. It only encourages them, which they were joking in the 70s. I never wanted to vote. An old good friend of mine, Jimmy Price, was talking about. I remember one time we went to a Michael Moore thing, and after we got out, there were people trying to sign people up to vote afterwards. And I was like, I'm not voting. This was stupid. And I remember Jimmy Price looked at the girl. I was like, oh, well, I'll talk to him. And then maybe that was 2006, and then 2000, and maybe that was 2000.
That's when you left, right?
In the 90s. No, I left the States for 10 years in 2005. 12 years or 11 years. But I don't know why I all of a sudden was registering to vote for Donald Trump. What was up with that? And then so I'm filling out the form, and one side was English, the other side was all Spanish. So you don't even have to speak English to vote for the President of the United States. I'm thinking to myself, what is going on here? So we're going to talk about a lot of things here on the show, and there's going to be a focus on me and my family and my race and my country and my God. My God. So we're going to clear up some misconceptions, because it's probably a good idea to turn off your radio right now. And I'm going to use the word radio, but I really mean your web browser or your phone or whatever it is. But, turn your radio off right now if you're going to be offended by things, because another character on the show is going to be me being the primary straight guy. Pete, you can be the color commentary, and then I'm going to have another guy on called the Ruiner, and the idea of the Ruiner is to kill you. So that is one of the subjects we're going to get into. That's one of the more esoteric subjects. But is to kill yourself. And that's what everybody needs to do. Most people need to do that. Because the person that they are is dirty. And it's not possible to really change yourself. It's just too difficult. It takes a very large amount of dedication to change. Change doesn't happen. The change happens. Evolution doesn't happen in a gradual sine wave curve. It happens in stair steps. There's a bunch of water in the pond, and all the tadpoles are having babies, and they're producing more tadpoles, and then the water is going lower and lower and lower, and generations and generations and generations of tadpoles are in. And at one point, there's not enough water, and boom, the babies are born with legs, and they become frogs, and they jump out of the water. So all of a sudden, there's maybe 10 generations of tadpoles, and boom, in one generation, there's legs. And they're not fish anymore. Now they're frogs, and then they jump out. So that's how evolution happens. And so basically, we go along about our lives perfectly fine until we see that one movie or hear that one radio show or that one song or something, and we just are inspired, and we just change everything. And the old person dies away, and then everything is new after that. Much like a baby. A baby doesn't have much of the old world with it when it comes out the womb. Everything's new. The lights and the air, it's not breathing water anymore. Everything's new. So that's what most people need to do in order to survive. And we're getting into, so all right, we're going to talk about white people. It's going to be a focus because we hear a lot about racism. And racism only includes one race. Right? You hear there's a bunch of rhetoric, and we're all learning the rhetoric, and we need to basically kill ourselves in order to get rid of that rhetoric. We need to just burn it all out. And the rhetoric is only white people can be racist. And there's no such thing as caring about white people. Even if you think it's okay to be white, then you're racist. And there's no benign racism. And these are all myths that we're going to dispel. And I've already written an article on racism we can read at one show. But racism is nothing more than the observation of differences between the races. So racism is inherently benign. Meaning racism does not connote bigotry. There's a word for bigotry, and it's bigotry. So racism doesn't mean bigoted racist. If you want to talk about somebody being a bigoted racist, then you have to say bigoted racist until we come up with a word for that. So, you can be a white racist and not be a white supremacist. A white racist means you understand that the white race exists. A racist is somebody who knows that there's differences between the races. And anybody that tells you that there's no difference between the races is probably also telling you there's no difference between the sexes. And that's something you're going to have to learn on your own, what the truth is for you. I don't even claim that there is any capital T truth. Because you could think everybody's right on some level, just because you don't recognize the patterns doesn't mean you're not involved in it. So there's only one race. When you say racist, you're not talking about oh, this black guy's a black, he's a racist. He's caring about the black people. Black power. But, two white guys get together and light a cigarette, and all of a sudden it's Ku Klux Klan meeting. So there's reasons for all this. We're going to talk about that. Gosh. All right. So, we're going to talk about the only two white guys that have ever been strong enough to stand up against the Zenosh. You know who those two guys are? Have any idea who the Zenosh? Who has anybody ever stood up to them? As far as I know, there's only been one guy, maybe two. And one of them wasn't even really white. He was an Arab. Lived 2,000 years ago. He was born in Bethlehem. Jesus. Mm-hmm. He stood up against the Jews. And the other one was Hitler. Adolf Hitler. Nobody else had the balls big enough to do anything about it. Or the acumen to put together a war machine like the Third Reich. Anyway, the Zenosh control the media, and the media has told you that Hitler is the worst man in the world. So we can't be caught up in saying it's upside down, the world's upside down, because that would be too easy. You put your money into this education ship, you get your, you want to get your money's worth. So it's not a complete upside down. Hitler's not the best guy in the world, because there were plenty of free Masonic lodges open during the, after the war. So we're going to talk about white people and Hitler and the Zenosh and free energy, Nikola Tesla, fermentation, the conservative renaissance, being on the right track, compost. We talked about God, country, tribe, family, individual. These are all the middle of the road subjects that everybody kind of knows about, and words are spelled. Another concept we could talk about. Do a show on that, right? Got to be careful with words, especially English words, because they're, words are spelled. Talk about that. Also, okay, another interesting thing to me is the Mandela effect. Mm-hmm. All right, and one of my gurus, John Lash, is doing the Mandela effect decoded on YouTube, and it's an incredible thing. This Mandela effect. Mandela effect is briefly a phenomenon. We were talking about it recently with. So what's that actress's name? She goes, "You like me. You really like me," right? What's her name? Remember? Sally.
Sally Field.
Right. Now you see, when I first asked you that, you said Sally Fields, but now you say Sally Field. That's a microcosm of the macrocosmic system we're in, which is when I was growing up, it was Sally Fields with an S on the end. Mm-hmm. Now you go to IMDb, Sally Field, no S. And
she dropped it or something.
No, she didn't drop it. You go back and look at her acceptance speech of the Oscar back then, mm-hmm. and it says Field on the original. On the original footage, it says Field with no S. So, there's only two explanations. One is harder to believe than the next. So either me, you, and a million other people have the wrong memory in our minds, or somebody went back and photoshopped all of the videos on YouTube and took off the S off Sally Field. All right, now that almost seems doable, but there's thousands of these Mandela effects. Sally Field, okay, you can go and look at videos. She said when she got that Oscar, she was like, "You like me. Mm-hmm. You really like me." And I remember Saturday Night Live and many people making fun of her, saying, "You like," Jim Carrey does it now. Mm-hmm. You like. You go back and listen to it now, that Oscar speech that now says Sally Field. You look at it now. What does she say? She doesn't say "you like me, you really like me." She says, "You like me. Right now you like me." Mm-hmm. Now that's weird. Because obviously it's always been like that. You look on it, it's always been like that. But why is it in my mind that she said something different? And why is there 500 other videos on YouTube where they're making fun of Sally Fields with the other way? Mm-hmm. There's thousands of these things, weird things going on. Okay, here's another one. All right. I'm going to say a Bible verse. All right, I think it's Isaiah 6. What is it? The lamb lies down with what?
The sheep?
No, the lamb. No, the lamb lies down with.
The lamb lies down. Fill in the blank.
Yeah, fill in the blank. Another animal, right? When I was growing up, it was always the lamb lies down with the lion. Go read your Bible now. It doesn't say lion anymore. It says the wolf. And I even asked Pastor Buck. I was like, The lamb lies down with the lion. And I said, oh yeah, you want to know something here? And I didn't want to say to him that John Lash is talking about how the earth is using the Mandela effect to let people know. And we're not talking about highbrow people who never watched Forrest Gump, because Forrest Gump, there's a Mandela effect in there, right? Well, what's Forrest Gump, right? Life is like a box of chocolates. What does that say?
Yeah, life is like a. I thought also life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
You never know what you. Right. Go watch it now on YouTube. It says life was like a box of chocolates. What's up with that? Why do I remember life is like a box of chocolates? Now all of a sudden it's life was like a box of chocolates. You never knew what you're going to get. No, you never know what you're going to get. That doesn't even make sense. It's not even grammatically consistent. The past tense and the present tense.
Mm-hmm.
Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. That's the reality is shifted. So either somebody put false memories in my mind, and everybody, all the millions of people that watch Forrest Gump, or somebody photoshopped all of the videos and even the DVD that I have in the closet. They even came to the house here, snuck in like Santa Claus one night and photoshopped it, snuck in a new one, because now it says life was like a box of chocolates. All the Bibles now say the lamb lies down with the wolf, of all things. I tried to tell that to Pastor Buck, and he was like, oh, the lamb lies down with the oh, no, it says wolf. Lamb lies down with the wolf. And he got caught up with the fact that well, people used to think lion because there was a painting of a lion, and they got there. No, he didn't understand. When you were growing up, you said lion because of what it said in the book. You said lion, and now the book says wolf. So either somebody came in and photoshopped all of the Bibles in the world. That didn't happen. Or, because even we're not talking about new printings. We're talking about books that Bibles we've had in the closet since we were kids. Those now say wolf. We're talking about. So either somebody physically changed the Bibles, like erased the word and wrote the word wolf in. It just didn't happen. Or our memories are wrong, or the timeline realities have changed. Something is really weird with this Mandela effect. So John Lash says the Mandela effect is for telling regular people, especially English-speaking people, it's mostly in English, popular movies like Forrest Gump and stuff, about that there's something going on, pay attention. So he says it's like, anyway, we'll talk about the Mandela effect. All right, now let's get on. We'll end the hour here with getting into the more meaty subjects we're going to get into this year. Okay, we're going to talk about politics, survival, the transhumanist movement, which the Zenosh are really pushing this transhumanism thing, the merging of man and machine, because the Zenosh, the form that the enemy takes on this planet is the machine. So, Rage Against the Machine talks about the machine, and there's some people that ask me, what is the machine? Well, you just have to look around you to see that the world filled with silicone and mercury and carbon monoxide is the machine loves those things. So I'm guessing that the chemical makeup, when the enemy comes into this domain, that the chemical makeup they assume is silicone and mercury. Like silicone is their cells and mercury is their blood. I mean, just a guess, looking at all of the things that were promoted now that are out there. Silicone's everywhere, because we're carbon-based units, to quote 7 of 9 from Star Trek. And the enemy is, computers aren't the enemy, but the enemy takes the form of a computer when it comes here. And the tools they use are metal and plastic. So those two things form robots. along with silicone. The computer, the silicone, the mercury, the other ores of alloys of iron and nickel and cadmium and tin, and these heavy metals all form the machine, the robot. And we'll talk about Sophia the robot versus Sophia the earth, the Gnostic teachings versus the Abrahamic religions. We're going to talk about the children, the chilblings, all the little poison girls. And when I say all the little poison girls, I don't mean all the little girls who have taken poison. I mean all the little chilblings, to quote Benny Hill. I'm sure he was just being funny, but the children are we need to look to what's happening to children. Any culture that doesn't protect its children is doomed. So we're going to talk about this very serious subject. Okay. We're also going to talk about farming. We could be a little lighter on the subject matter there, but very important nonetheless. Money, comedy, laughter, music, and dance, salsa dance. Like, I'm a white guy. For the most part, I got a little bit of the Jewish beauty going on, but, you know, me and you, we look a little bit Arabic. Right? We could pass for Arabs. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam. Inshallah. Hey, Bibi. So, you know, I love white people. But white men can't jump too high. They can't dance too well. But, well, you don't want a bridge, you know, built by a bunch of Mexicans. You know, you're not going to go into space with a rocket made by any Taiwanese anytime soon. Well, Taiwan does have a good space program, don't they?
Yeah.
Or no,
I
they
couldn't really break that out for you. To tell you the truth, I don't know.
pretty much the Germans, the German rocket
It's mostly
scientists.
that,
You know, rocket. I mean, how hard can it be? You know, it's not like rocket science or anything going to space, is it? Well, if you're, we're still using rockets to go to space. Nothing against the brilliant von Braun and all his cohorts, the V2 and all the Project Paperclip boys who came over and built our space program. But that's not the way to travel through space because, well, space doesn't exist. Motion is an illusion. Getting ahead of myself here. All right, we're talking about medicine, scalar energy versus the American Medical Association. Herbs. Just went to the Chinese herbologist doctor guy today. It's very nice. We're talking about free energy, Brown's gas and Keshe. Smart meters, big deal. Smart meters. Scalar energy, vaccines and autism. All right, so now let's wrap up the last hour here. In a few, if I can do it briefly. This year, we're going to also talk about these more serious subjects. All right, we already said, kill yourself. All right, you can come onto the show as a guest, and you can kill yourself with the Ruiner in an unsafe zone. Okay, danger zones. I'm guessing all the snowflakes melted early on in the show when I told them to turn off the radio. And, well, we don't need to save everyone because there's a lot of missing information. Misleading information can be worse than no information. It's better to have no teacher than it is to have a bad teacher. Right? If you're not sure which way you want to go, east or west, best not to get on any train and just have another cigarette and stand around on the station a while longer. Better to do that than get on the wrong train. Save yourself some time. All right, so the Bible has a lot of misleading information. And when I say the Bible, when I say the book, it has a lot of misleading information, so it can be worse than having no information, and that's the purpose of it, is to mislead us. And I'm no longer stuck in the judgmental good versus bad thing. Been there, done that. And now I know it's all a game, and you just have to figure out the rules, and then you're like, oh, you figured out the rules. Awesome. Right? So, Constantine wasn't a bad guy, for cutting out the books of the Bible that talk about, reincarnation and all these other things that they said. In 1945, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. Well, what became the Nag Hammadi Library, the Nag Hammadi Scrolls were discovered. And, we have other Gnostic teachings that we know written around the same time in the first few centuries after the death of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that you can tell, okay, for example, how the Bible has misleading information, which is worse than no information. St. Paul writes about going to Damascus, and if he finds any of the way along the route, on the way, if he finds any of the way, then he will take them back to Jerusalem in chains, right? As prisoners in handcuffs, in chains. So, when the New International Bible, or they say that they translate, and I have to get the Greek, but they say they translate this into any of the way, or even can be along the way or along the road. So if I'm in Damascus and I see anybody along the road, I'm going to take him back to Jerusalem in chains. It's not what they're saying. The better translation, according to John Lash, is this is according to Ralph Ellis, that Ralph Ellis, who wrote King Jesus, and we can get into Ralph Ellis and talk about who Jesus really was. Why was there the three kingmaker Knights of the Magi at the birth of Jesus Christ? At the birth of, Yeshua. Why did they have the kingmakers of Persia there if he's just a carpenter's son? Some poor carpenter's son. Doesn't make sense. Right? Is because he wasn't a poor carpenter's son. He was perhaps the great-grandson of Cleopatra the Seventh and Julius Caesar or Mark Antony. Because he was a Persian king. That's who Jesus was. But no. And he was just a poor farmer's boy. We can talk about all that, right? So anyway, the translation should be, according to Ralph Ellis, it should be capital way, capital THE, capital WAY, the way. It's like the Tao or something. The people, the way, the people, the followers of Jesus and James, the fourth sect of Judaism. And the fifth sect became Saul's Christianity. So, according to Ralph Ellis, they're misleading us to say, Paul was saying that if he finds any, people on the road, he's going to arrest them. But no, he meant to say if he finds any followers of Jesus along the way, he's going to arrest them and so on. But that's not the idea. The idea is that Paul is a big follower of Jesus, when it clearly states that he was going to arrest them because he just, anyway. All right, so we're just we're just giving a list here. Okay, so we're at the heart of the matter here. These are the dozen or so reasons that our lives are in danger now. All right, first one: kill yourself. Okay? So you have to forget what you've read in the Bible, that because it's all misleading information. You've been misled on who Paul really is, the Jew. Oh, but he turned great all of a sudden, and he wrote the New Testament. Paul wrote the New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
Or Saul. Actually, his name was Josephus, who's also called Josephus, or Joseph of Arimathea, perhaps. All the same guy. Interesting. Okay, so moving on. Secrecy, privacy, piracy, piracy. So, just so you know, if you're one of the enemies of man with all the, and how we know that what I'm piecing together is we're not the enemies of man at this point thousands of years later. We're talking about thousands of millennial consciousness here, right?
Mm-hmm.
We live and die. I mean, according to the Bible, they lived 1,000 years. I mean, Noah was in like 900s when he died, having kids, at an early age of 250. So, if you are one of the enemies of man and you want to silence me, just go ahead and give me $1 million. All right. I'm just trying to take care of my family here. Mm-hmm. All right. So it's actually going to be 10 million. All right. So I'm going to have 5 million. The first million for my daughter, second million for my wife, third million for my father, and then my brother. Yeah, my brother's in there. Yeah, he's up there actually. And for my family, and then another 5 million for the friends and everybody.
Yep.
Right, and I'll be quiet. I'm just trying to take care of my family. I'm only creating this system to take care of my family. All right, so I don't have to work. I can just sit around and lecture all day. But until that happens, I'm going to go ahead and. All right, we're going to wrap it up quickly, but I'll tell you all of the things you hear in the media. I'm telling you, that's why you got to kill yourself, right? Okay, let's talk about Big Brother, right? Big Brother's watching. Ooh, secrecy. We gotta have privacy because Big Brother's watching us. Well, if he's our Big Brother, shouldn't he be taking care of us?
I think so.
All right. My point is, not only is Google aware of where you are when you got your cell phone on wandering in the forest, they're also culpable. They're also responsible for finding you. That ends all kidnapping and people that are lost children. Google knows where they are. Mm-hmm. They get a cell phone. Where was their last movements? Where was their last known movements? Google knows where they are. The machine knows where they are. Okay, so I'm sorry to say, guys, privacy's over, and because it's already over a long time ago with Big Brother. So let's just admit it, get it over with, get everything out in the open, and then everything will be out in the open. All right, so that's a big one. You don't hear that too often.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's one of the broken spokes of the wheel now. Like what's her name? The Queen of Dragons, the Khaleesi of the Khal said, we don't want to stop the wheel, Pop. We want to break the wheel. All right, so we're going to break all these spokes here, the 16 spokes. All right, so Big Brother's, so secrecy's finished. Big Brother's responsible. All right. Okay, you heard of Albert Einstein?
Yeah.
You heard of Nikola Tesla?
Yeah.
Right. You ever heard of Walter Russell?
Can't really say I know too much about him.
Yeah, nobody does. Nobody's heard of him. And when I say nobody, I've heard of him. Yep. So, what's my boy's name? Yeah, there's people have heard of him. Okay, so what's the colors? What are the normal colors associated with people? Right, girls are what color and boys are what color?
White.
Right. Well, girls are pink, wear pink, and then boys wear blue. Right. And actually, that was flipped in the 50s, I think. Do you ever remember when you were a kid? The hospitals used to put, why babies are born in a hospital. There's which is the Krankenhaus. Kranken means sick. The sick house. That's where babies are being born. It doesn't make sense to me. You got a guy in there with leprosy right next to a mother. Just doesn't make sense. Why are babies born in the hospital? Anyway, back in the day, boys had more of a red thing and girls had a light blue. And then now it's the other way around. Walter Russell says men like Donald Trump. Remember in the 2016 the colors, right? Donald Trump was red, Hillary was blue. Men are red, women are blue. Men vibrate slower, women vibrate more quickly. You know, there's the red side of the visible light spectrum, and there's the blue side. The red is slower, and the blue is faster. It's ultra red, infrared and ultraviolet. Those are the energy forms just outside of the visible spectrum. The infrared being slower than red, and the ultraviolet being faster than blue. But according to Walter Russell, men are red. Red is a man's color. So, we'll talk about Walter Russell and what he says. And we'll talk about the Thunderbolts Society, thunderbolts.org. .org? The Wal Thornhill and the boys, what they're doing over there. Talking about, we've proved Einstein wrong a long time ago. The wife beater, he wasn't so bright, this guy, but he was Jewish, so they pushed him along and fed him lines, told him what to say, and next thing you know, he's up there on the Nobel platform accepting awards. But he's proven wrong a long time ago with his theories of these dark matters and his quantum nonsense. So, poor Nassim Harriman, all these new, Michio Kaku. You read any of his books? String theory. Anyway, it's all, Walter Russell does a fair job of explaining what could be happening. What Wal Thornhill is saying is, okay, for example, why does the modern astrophysicists measure with their instruments the dark area underneath a solar flare is colder than the surface? Shouldn't a thermonuclear furnace be the hottest in the center? Why is it dark and cold underneath a solar flare? How is the center of our sun, I'm talking about our sun, how is the center of our sun colder than the surface of the sun? Perhaps because it's like a light bulb, and there's a very hot filament in the very center, and the surface is hot, but it's cold space in between. It's not a thermal, according to Walter Russell and Wal Thornhill, we don't live in a system of thermonuclear gas giants. These are light bulbs. We see electrical phenomena. And then all of a sudden you don't have to have the Planck length and all these dark matters and dark space and all these things. Because it's an electrical universe. So we're going to talk about Walter Russell. All right, these are the big boy subjects we're going to get into. Now, if you're listening and at some point in the future, remember, offer me tenureship at the university, and then all this magically goes away. All right, I don't have to save the earth. I just want to take care of the family. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. All right, we talked about racism. All right, so Walter Russell, yeah, the one word to describe his theory: balanced. To put it in 3 words: balance. To put it in 3 words: balanced rhythmic interchange. Lots of good subject there. Okay, we're talking about AI is a big thing now, about the robot, the fembot, Sophia. You know who Charlie McCarthy is? You ever heard of him, Charlie McCarthy? He was the wooden dummy.
The one that
He was the wooden dummy.
could turn his head 360 degrees.
Yeah, that's Chucky. Yeah, there was the robot Sophia is a, well, she's not wooden, but she is a dummy, and she has a ventriloquist handler speaking all of her lines. AI technology will never. It's not possible. This is just a man. It's not possible. Like Einstein said, you can't fix the problem with the same technology that caused the problem. Okay, that's a non sequitur. It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. You human beings, it's not possible for a God to create something. I mean, for human beings to create something that's smarter than them. We can't create something that's smarter than us. We can't create a consciousness that's going to one day be smarter than us. Because it's not possible. Just what I think. Let's say it is possible. Okay? There's only one conclusion that the AI is going to come to once it comes online, which it never will. But let's say it does come online. It's going to take 2 seconds for the AI to figure out who the enemy of the earth is. And now, not only do we have, guys like us and John Lash and Katie Couric and the Golden One and the Aryan and Doomguard and Henrik and all the other guys fighting. Now we have AI on our side fighting against the enemies of the earth. And we don't need AI. We can do it by ourselves, but okay, anyway. All right, so just briefly, let's talk about what John Lamb Lash is talking about, his Gnostic interpretations. We're gonna dedicate a lot of time to John Lamb Lash Gnostic interpretation of these scrolls that were found by a Egyptian farmer in 1945 in a little monument, little temple in Nagamati, Egypt, and so that's a bunch of these codices, these leather books were translated into English in the 90s eventually, and we now have English translations, and John is going through the some of these old writings and interpreting them, and they all right, this is for the Zenosh. We're going to say JRM. We're going to explain what that is. RCS. We're going to explain what that is. The Archons. We're going to talk about his Mandala effect decoded. So we're going to leave those acronyms just as acronyms for right now, not to get too heavy. All right. But we're talking about some pretty heavy subjects. So if any Zenosh are listening, again, offer me tenureship at a university. Or, a fancy Silicon Valley job. I'm a computer programmer. All right. Here's another one. You ready? When somebody becomes I guess quickly, we're over the hour now. So, we're going to talk about insane asylums. Who's there and why they're there. What are these places? Goes along with the JRM thing. The JRM thing. RCS also has to do... You ever heard of Pizzagate?
Pizzagate?
Yeah. You ever heard of Watergate?
Yeah.
You ever heard of Pizzagate?
I've heard of pizza, but I don't know about a special gate penalty on it.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that. Don't worry. We'll fill you in. All right. So... Sane asylums. The Council of Stolen Elders. All right. Talk about racism and all this stuff. Boy, you're in for a treat. You're in therapy. Drinking your own water.
Mm.
Oh, I heard an interesting thing about Mandalay Bay. You know Mandalay Bay?
Mandalay Bay, that's that's the where the music goes and comes from.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, we're going to talk about the latest conspiracy theories about the terrorist shooting in Las Vegas in the beginning of October, and what perhaps might have really happened there with the Saudi prince of all people. Okay, so let's wrap it up. Susie, good night. Peter, good night. Everyone, thanks for tuning in.
Good night, John boy.
Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, Becky Sue.
Good night, Grandma.
Good night, Mom.